first, most important perhaps, tell us what you learned.
Well, first off, I met with NATO military leaders and U.S. military leaders in Germany, and they're absolutely committed to do everything they can to provide all lethal weapons they can. You know, you're always waiting on the elected leaders in each of these countries to make sure they're allowed to do it. But our military, NATO military, they're absolutely committed to, one, get lethal aid to Ukraine and be ready if Putin decides to invade a NATO country. Number two, in Poland, you should really, really, really respect what the Polish citizens are doing, what the Polish government is doing. You don't have these refugees, and there's millions of them now, in refugee camps or at homes. People have opened up their homes all across this country. They've welcomed them. The government has said you can go on our safety net programs until you get to go back to your home country. We laid a wreath commemorating what happened in the Holocaust in Warsaw with the American ambassador to Poland. And then I went to Lithuania, where I saw American troops ready in case Russia decides to invade Lithuania. And I met with the president and other elected leaders. They're very focused on America being their partner. They know that Communist China is not their friend, and they know that the Castro regime needs to be held accountable. So it was a great trip. Putin's a thug. He's a murderous thug. We've got to do everything we can to help Ukraine win this war, and Russia troops go back to Russia with their tail between their legs.
And part of that effort, in all likelihood, is trying to support the Europeans in bringing pressure bear on Moscow. As you know, over the last 24 hours, some of the biggest news was Russia cutting off those gas supplies to Poland and Bulgaria with potential further cutoffs. Is there anything the United States can do? I mean, I remember, not necessarily because I remember it specifically, but I certainly read about what President Kennedy did back in 1961 with respect to Berlin and airlifting and supplies. Is there any equivalent to that the U.S. could do to help on natural gas?
Well, I think the big thing is we've got to do everything we can to make sure we're a major producer. We've got to, one, make sure we're strong, so we've got to become energy independent. And number two, we've got to put ourselves in a position that we have enough, so much fuel, so much oil and gas that we can ship it to our allies in Europe. And anywhere around the world that needs our support. We've got to make sure we're strong first so we can help our allies. And that's one thing why we can't be killing the Keystone Pipeline. We've got to allow drilling on federal lands. We've got to get these permits going so we get more oil and gas drilled in this country, safely, of course, so we can help our allies.
Is there a potential silver lining here in this sense that over the longer term, perhaps Europe would actually be weaned off of Russian gas in the long term?
Oh, absolutely, David. Lithuania understands. Poland understands you have to do that now. They know that Russia's not their friend. So smart countries are doing it. Germany is learning that they have to do it. Unfortunately, you've seen that their electric rates are up so much, gas prices are up so much. So it's going to happen. And you can see, Putin's a thug. He's a bully. He's somebody that's willing to kill women and children, and now he's willing to hold people hostage for fuel. So when we think about this, who would have thought Putin was different, or she's different? She's going to do the same thing in China. If we're dependent on China or Russia or Iran or any of these bad countries, their governments, for anything, we're foolish. Any country's foolish.
Senator, I'd like to turn to politics if we could. We obviously have a midterm election coming up in November. You have a leadership position in helping the Republicans, particularly in the Senate, try to take back a majority. And I wonder about the strategy there. Obviously, issues such as inflation and the border and crime will loom large. But it's a long time until November. We don't know where those issues will be in November. The Democrats say you don't have an affirmative plan, you just shoot at us on our plan. What is the affirmative plan from the Republicans? Well,
first off, we have great candidates running. You're right. The Biden administration, the numbers are bad. Inflation's bad. The border being open's bad. Shutting down the Keystone Pipeline, the Afghan withdrawal. I think a lot of Republicans are going to talk about those issues because it is a referendum on the president and what the Democrats are doing. But I think in every case, we have to have a plan. I put out my own plan, but every candidate's going to put out a plan. Mine is, you can go to rescueamerica.com and look at it. But every candidate has to say, this is what I'm going to do when I'm going to get to Washington. And I'm excited because I think next year we are going to have a plan and we're going to get something done.
Well, what would the Republicans, let's assume for the moment, we don't know this is going to happen, but assume the Republicans take the majority in the House and the Senate. What would be different in the country?
I think what you've got to do, we've got to get inflation under control. The way you get inflation under control is you've got to reduce taxes, you've got to reduce the size of government, you've got to reduce, you've got to make it easier to get a permit, you've got to make sure we don't have regulations we don't need. So you get businesses to expand as rapidly as we can. So as we create more competition, prices will come down. We've got to make sure we're energy independent. It's the biggest cost of most of our countries right now, is they're just unbelievable increase in energy cost. So I think that's what we have to start with. We've got to start with doing those things, and then we've got to secure our border. We've got to secure a border. We've got to make sure we have the strongest military possible. So I think those are going to be the big changes that we're going to see next year. We're going to make sure our schools are focused on education, not on critical race theory. Make sure we fund our police. Those will be the things we'll be doing next year.
So, Senator, all of those things I understand and sort of expect, except for one, and that is cut taxes in order to get inflation down. Most economists say it works the other way. Lower taxes are a fiscal stimulus. Why does cutting taxes get inflation down?
I think the more you put money back in people's pockets, the more you put money back in businesses' pockets, you're going to get more competition. Here's what happened in my state. When I was governor, I walked in January 2011 with a horrible economy. We started cutting taxes, and I actually cut taxes and fees 100 times. Our revenues skyrocketed. We added 1.7 million jobs, and we didn't see high inflation because we created more competition in our state. I mean, if you want inflation to come down, you got to do everything you can to create more competition. It starts with making sure we're energy independent, but you got to do everything you can to get more businesses to prosper. If you put more money back in people's pockets, what they're going to do is they're going to start businesses, expand businesses, and create more competition.
Senator, finally, as you know full well, Elon Musk apparently is about to buy Twitter. And one possibility, at least, is in buying Twitter. He says he wants to expand it out more, have fewer restrictions. We could see former President Trump back on Twitter. Would that be good for Republicans in the Senate race or bad?
I think having a conversation with everybody. I think Republicans ought to be the party of ideas. We ought to fight over who's got the best ideas. And so I think everybody, you get on every social platform you can and talk about what you believe in. The Americans agree with us. They want jobs. They don't want high inflation. They want their kids to get a great education, not be taught, critical race theory. They want to live in a safe community. So let's get everybody on every platform we can, talk about all the things we believe in. Let's have a fight over issues and ideas, and that's what's good for the American public.